Hi, everybody. Welcome here today to one of our last sessions. I'm very excited to be here with you. My name is Lisa Clark. I'm a Senior Client Experience Manager here with Blackboard. And welcome to How Tools in Blackboard Can Create Asynchronous Opportunities for Discussion. I am going to be joined here today by our lead presenter, Tim Curry, who is an assistant professor at the College of Western Idaho. Tim is also a clinical exercise physiologist who received his Master's of Science from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. And in his past, he has done work, not only working with clinical populations, but also work in sports medicine and working as a consultant and coach with athletes of all levels. At CWI, he oversees running the exercise science program, but he also teaches in various other areas. And outside of CWI, he also teaches at Boise State University. And as you know, Boise State, great online institution there. And he serves both undergrad and graduate courses there, and also works for the U.S. Speed Skating Sports Science Commission. Pretty exciting stuff. Outside of academia, Tim is an avid mountain biker, a former CAT1 and pro level racer, as well as a volunteer coach for the local Boise area high school mountain bike team. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it on over to Tim Curry.
Hi, and thank you. So I think you went and hit all of the high points about me, but we'll just go ahead and begin there. So I am Tim. My background is quite varied, but for this particular talk, as we're going to talk more about teaching, I'll go and say for this sake, a lot of what we're going to hit today has really occurred in the past year for us. I think all of us fell into a spot about a year ago where we got booted online very quickly. So a lot of what I'll go and hit for the next about 30 or so minutes will be about what we've experienced. So just to give you an overview here, here's where we are going to head for our day. The first place was I would like to begin with just defining some of the challenges we saw as a department walking into this online world that we've been in. Then just a little bit about the tool that we use to actually meet our needs. I'm trying to spend most of my time here on a couple examples from our courses about how we've actually applied this to create discussion space online in the format that we'd like to actually do in an in-person course, and then wrap it all up with just one slide about recommendations that we have for all of you. So why don't we just go ahead and dive in? All right, I know if we were in person, we could fill up an hour just going and talking about the challenges of having an online course where we don't have a set point where we actually meet as a class, right? But for us, we ID'd a couple big points. The first one was that when we're in an online place, students are going to work when it's convenient for them. Our college has a challenge that I think is unique here. We serve a population that has a wide range in experience, ages. I mean, I can tell you I've had people in my classroom from age 16 all the way to, I think my oldest student was about 80. So huge range of people, income gaps, people who work multiple jobs and are in college. So what we found is even if we try to apply a deadline for them midweek, they're going to work when it actually works for them. So this has to incorporate that. Number two, we all know this. Some people are going to wait till the last possible moment to submit whatever they're doing. So to create discussion, that presents a challenge because if they all wait until that point, how do we actually promote discussion? Number three, this is more of a faculty thought here, but unlike in person, if we're in this online environment, we lack the ability to really give them immediate feedback and correct a problem as it's occurring. This can lead to what we've observed before, which I would call a spiral where one person doesn't quite understand the question or the prompt, or maybe their answer isn't quite in line with what we know about our field, and that just goes and spurs on another person and a third and a fourth and a fifth, where we just spiral down into a spot where we don't want to be. Now in person that's easy to fix because I can stop it immediately, but online that's a different challenge. And then finally, the fourth one, and this is the big one for me, application versus just rehashing. When I teach in person, a big part of what I try to bring into the classroom are discussions where they're taking the knowledge we've gained from textbooks, videos, whatever it is, and moving it from just, I know this fact, I can repeat it, to, I can apply this to a new scenario. And in particular, create a position stand, justify my reason why that's right and stand behind it with ideally sources. So those are the things we said we need to meet this as we go and move into this online world. After looking at a ton of things, and in fairness, this is not all that we do in this for our group, but this is the main thing. We chose Hypothesis, a tool that I would assume at least some of you know about. So Hypothesis, for those of you who don't know, this is a integration into Blackboard, and it is a thing that, to my understanding, it is an additional tool that you're going to have to pay for. And I know that that's a barrier for some of you. However, I'm going to try to convince you, and I don't get paid by them at all, just to be fair, that this is absolutely worth the cost if you go and teach online. So using this is really easy. The basic idea here is that I can use a website or a PDF, and I bring it into this program that lives actually in our Blackboard shell, so they don't have to leave it, which is really nice. And I can go in there and I can notate on it. I can go and make a comment about that point. I can reply to my peers, and this is an easy way to get discussion going. Personally, as a faculty, I love the fact that they don't have to go to a third-party site. I love the fact that this brings the grade that I provide in the program directly into my Blackboard gradebook, so there's less work that I have to do. And frankly, it's as easy as doing anything else. So if you're okay with a quiz, it's just as fast. All right, use case number 1. So I have 3 of these, and before I go forward, I'll say that I try to arrange these from the easiest, where we actually begin, to the most advanced, where we'd be further on into the term. This first one is an example from a global health course that we teach that is used in week 2. It's the first time they've seen this program before. And purely all that we're trying to do is to get them to take concepts from our book, tie them into a new idea that's outside of our book, and to start to just engage at a low tier at this peer-to-peer engagement and discussion. So what this looks like for us, as we said, our goals are threefold. First of all, reinforce what we have learned from our book that week. Number 2, get them to demonstrate a link between I read about this in our book to here's what's actually occurring in real life right now. And then finally, get them to start to think about how do I engage in this peer-to-peer format in an online course where I don't actually see another person. So for us, for this class, it made perfect sense for us to start with a PDF file that was the World Health Org's goals for us right now. So these goals, we've got a set of goals and 127 targets that we're trying to reach at this point. For this part of our book, they are learning about the broad categories that we're trying to work in global health. So what we did was we brought this into our program, and then their task was this. They were told, okay, we have these 8 areas inside of our book that you have read about and learned about the basics. Now you're in charge of 2 things. First of all, go in here, read the entire list of all of these goals and how we are going to address all of them, and then highlight and notate on which goals do you think are most important for each area, 1 per one. So they'll do 8 of those, and explain, which is what we see on the right-hand side here, why you think it's the most important goal to achieve in order to meet our overall ideas that we're attempting in global health. So this is a pretty basic starting point, but from our experience, this is where we have to start. We need them to get used to this idea of finding information and linking it up here in this format. It tends to lead to more success later on. So from there, we also have them do peer-to-peer engagement. And for this one, it's very basic. It's I want you to find X amount of peers and provide a substantial comment to their post. And instructions here are very important, because we found that if it's just do a reply, you'll get a ton of cool, that's good. And that's not really what we're looking for, right? In class, we want them to move the conversation forward, and that's our goal. So that's what we tried to get them to do here. And again, this is week 2. They're just beginning to learn all of this. So the replies aren't the best, and that's okay. That's what we kind of expect. And our feedback starting in week 3 is, okay, now we are going to move to a higher tier and keep pushing them forward until we actually begin to go and see discussion occurring in this format. So there's our peer-to-peer, and we're beginning to drive a discussion here online. So example 2, in fact, actually works out well, because this is a few weeks later in the exact same class. And now we're going to go up a tier, and we're going to begin to introduce things that actually spark discussion. And what I would say as well is discussion that I actually have seen in class in person, which is our ultimate goal. So for this one, our goals are this, threefold. First of all, again, we would like to see them take the knowledge that they have, and not only from this week, from every week before this, and apply it to a specific topic. In this case, air pollution. That's our topic for this week. Number two, and here's really where we begin to get discussion, we want to see them have to create and support a stance on a particular policy. And again, for this one, we're going to talk about the air, so air pollution regulations, including the idea of a syntax. So we go and have them do this twice in this one. For our class, we also include discussions on morality of a choice. So how do I judge what is the morally right thing to do? Should I tax people? Should I not? Why is that right? Why is that wrong? This also is a thing that helps promote a lot of discussion here. And our goal ultimately with all this is we're going to have advanced peer-to-peer engagement, so actual discussion. And for me, the key is this: with faculty oversight. I'm not in charge of spurring on a question to lead a conversation. This is their task. It's like if we engage them as an entire class where we just kind of sit above that and watch. So what this appears like in our software is this. For us, we picked a case. Now, this is a case from a database that is available to everybody. And unlike the first one, the students are not creating notations. So this is another format that you can use. Instead, I went in there and I preceded the entire case with questions that they were to address. So they're purely replying to my post and their peers. They're not in charge of going and assessing this case on their own. So as I go down here, I'll see I reach the first part, which is purely I use the questions in our case here to help them reinforce knowledge that they know. So the first part was just getting their brains going, address these 4 points, and that's it. Really basic. Again, we have found that giving them a starting place where it gets them thinking is important because it gets you better discussion down the road. Next up, though, we hit the true discussion point. So we have 2 parts of this, which I'll just go and explore one here, highlighted, that are really big points that require them to make a personal stance and stand behind it. So none of this, well, I can see both sides. Take a stance, back it up with what we know. So for this one, I have notated on this entire box right here and provided them 2 prompts. The first one revolves around, should the US create more aggressive policies or laws around air pollution? Yes or no, and then back up your opinion. And then part 2, what viewpoint do you believe you used to actually arrive at this conclusion of what's right to actually do? Now, I'll say that that's a thing that we've discussed previously in this course, and they're just beginning to dip their feet into this idea of assessing why do they think what they think is right. So for this first one, I can see that we've got some early replies here. And the first one, I'll admit, it's not quite where we want it to be. It's also the first time they've been asked to back up their own opinion and justify it in front of their virtual class. So this one isn't quite where I would like it, but a lot of these are actually quite good. And this is helping them actually have to stand back and apply. But the larger part is we found when they actually do that, discussion occurs, and a lot of it. So this was just a fast one I found, and I believe that this was the third post, and I can see at the very top on the right-hand side, I have the primary post from the original person about what they believe we should do and why, and then I have a peer part 2 and a peer to that peer. So we've got a discussion actually occurring here, and this is one that I'll go and say I've frankly been very surprised where these have gone, because I have seen these go into not bad spots, but very good spots, exploring, well, you don't think we should tax this because it will decrease businesses' ability to make a profit. What's the value of human life and health? And we get into these very interesting discussions that I would like to actually spur in class. And the best part is they're doing this with their own peers. It's not us asking a question that we just get the exact same post over and over again. We're actually seeing them express opinions on their own. So that's the part 2. So that was tier 1, tier 2. Now we're into tier 3, and this is about as far advanced as I've gone with this program. which is asking them as a class to work as a unit to understand something very complex. And for this case, it's breaking down a journal piece that is quite advanced for this tier. So my goals with this one, and this is a different class too. So this is a class I teach, and it's a 200 tier class. But their job is to work as a class, as an entire class, to explore and understand the piece I give them. This includes understanding and reflecting on what they actually learned and seeing what their peers did as well. And then finally, advanced peer-to-peer engagement and problem solving. And that's a big part of this one, is solving a problem as a class. So just to go and tell you, at a 200 tier, which this is about mid 200, we're going to spend some time looking through a admittedly a little bit older piece, but well done, about the physics of a baseball pitch. And this is probably the most advanced piece that any of them have read up to this point. And individually, it can be overwhelming. But what they are told is, in this class, your job is to go through here as a class and notate on any points you think are important. And on the right-hand side, in a comment, paraphrase what you highlighted in your own words about what you learned from this point. And as we could see here, the notations for this class, this is a 24-page paper. They had about 195 different parts that they went and said that they believe were important. So they actually did a ton of work in this one. And what this spurred, in fact, was great, which was the peer-to-peer engagement on this one was phenomenal. In that, I saw this multiple times, where right here I have a person who had a note as in, I don't understand what this says, basically help. And they had their own peers go and appear and give their opinion of, I think it's saying this because of this part before it, or because of this. So we actually had students in a class where they're not in here at the exact same time, helping each other understand advanced ideas in research, which was pretty amazing to actually go and have occur in this class. Finally, reflection, I think, is always important. It's a thing that when we do this exact drill in class, I always go and ask them to reflect about what they learned, apply to our course. And again, it's a thing that we do here, and it's a thing that I've seen drive some peer-to-peer engagement here about, oh, I didn't think about that point, but that's a great, thought. So this has been a very useful thing for us. And out of the last year, roughly, these are the things that we've learned. The first one is hypothesis is great for formative work. If we're trying to get them to explore ideas, explore the bounds of what they know, I would want to give them a safe space where even if they're wrong, we can go and correct that, and they're not going to lose a large amount of their grade for it. So it works great in that case. A very important part here, though, is make sure you're abundantly clear with what you actually tell them to do. That is very, very important. If you don't, you'll get a lot of confusion. You'll get a lot of people who just don't know what they're doing. I think personally, and this is my opinion, I think the reason that I see more engagement for the same assignment between a discussion board versus a hypothesis, exact same thing, is because hypothesis looks like Facebook, Reddit, Twitter feeds. It looks like social media. It looks like a thing that they know what to do and they know how it's supposed to work. So it tends to get them more engaged. And in fact, I'll go and say this, I have kids in a course where I know them personally, and in an in-person course, they're not this talkative, and suddenly they're the most talkative person there. So it can open a door to people who are shy. A big part as well here is that it creates discussion as they read, not after the fact. Now that it may seem minor, and I was like, before, but this was actually a very big thing. So as I read this case, I am replying to things before I hit the end. So we get them to apply ideas when it's relevant, not after the fact. Reply chains, and I went and showed you one slide with this, can foster great discussion. But I have a heads up for you. First of all, you need to go and define as faculty what's your role. Are you going to moderate this, or are we going and playing kind of the God role where we oversee it, but we don't really take a part of it unless there is a problem that we need to stop. As these get bigger and bigger in a class, these can become difficult to go and watch consistently. So keep that in mind. For this term, I'll go and say the largest group I have in here is about 45 students in one hypothesis. In the fall term, I had 110. 110 was a handful. It was doable, but it was tough. All right, so just plan that out. Next up, start simple and build it up. You're not going to get good replies in the first week from my experience. They need to understand how does this work and what are you expecting out of them. If you keep up a high tier of what we expect the entire time and just slowly ramp up what they're doing, you can get them to a very advanced spot where they're actually having a discussion as a class online and you don't even have to go and drive it. It's being done by them, which is great. A big part of that, though, is you have to lay the rules out from day one about what's allowed and what's not. I apply exactly what I do in class. If you're going to be racist, you're going to get kicked out. It's very easy, right? So exact same thing that we would do in class, we do online here. And a part for you to go and explain early on is the flag tool, which is on the right-hand side here. There's a small flag that they can go and click and say, hey, this is potentially abusive, it's a concern, all of that stuff. And that tells you immediately, you need to go and look at this exact point here and see if it's okay. If it's not, I can just go and pull it out, right? Or I might ask the person to rephrase what they have there in a way that's better. Now, in fairness, this is a thing that in a year and a half of my engagement with this program has been used all of once, and that was by a student who clicked it and then was like, whoops. So it's never actually been a problem, but I think the class knowing that it's there helps give them security in knowing that if things are problematic, they have a way to let me know immediately. Finally, of course, if you take the role that I do in these ones where I'm there to make sure that we're going in the right direction, but I'm not there to guide the entire thing. I let the class engage in that. Make sure you debrief. All right. This is again my space to allow them to explore a topic or idea in a very guided way. But I always give them the week behind this, a video that walks them through here's what's right, here's what's wrong, here are the different ways I could view this, so that they're very clear about, exactly what did I get right, what did I get wrong, and why. So that's all I have for my talk, and we're just about right on time for that. So at this point, I made sure that we left plenty of time for questions, if there are some, about this program or what we've done with it. So I'll open that up to our chat and Lisa.
Thanks, Tim. Wow, that was a lot of great information. Thank you so much. Don't see a whole lot of questions, comments, good comments about what's been discussed and that kind of thing. But a couple questions about if the tool is free. And of course, you started off the conversation here telling us that no, it is, of course, a subscription. And actually, Nate is in the chat right now, offering up some information there on the tool. Okay. So that's very helpful. I do have a question, I guess, because, some people aren't going to have access to Hypothesis, and it looks fantastic. But was there anything that you did outside of Hypothesis that maybe could tie into some of the same learning strategies and teaching strategies you had that maybe people could still apply?
Yeah, so we actually, prior to this point, I'll say I'm going to academically borrow, i.e., steal, right? A thing that my department chair has done before we actually really engaged with this tool, which was he had a lot of success using the wiki tool, in fact, to drive discussion like this. And the way that he did that was basically he was very clear about exactly what he wanted them to do. And he would essentially copy and paste what he wanted into that wiki. And he formatted it so that the text that he didn't want them to touch was formatted, bold and in a specific color. So it was in like read all this, and then he would put in the question in the wiki page, and he gave them a specific way to format how they responded. So if I remember right, because this was a while back, it was like 2 years plus back, he would go and tell them, you would go and start off by doing a bullet point, and then if it's a reply, I would do a sub point or a sub point. And that seemed like it worked fairly well. But again, you do have kind of a little bit more of a technological hurdle there, in that they need to be guided into how to actually create this response in a way that makes sense to people. But the wiki was a great way because, it's a great way to do the same thing, because it allows you to break down and see exactly what did every person put into this thing. And you can do a lot of the same stuff. You just have to plan it out a little bit more.
Yeah, great, great. That's a good bit of advice there. Yeah, wikis are great for collaborative learning, for sure. Have you had experience? Are you in Blackboard Learn Ultra or Blackboard Learn Original or both? What have you been teaching in?
We've been in Ultra since last June.
Okay, Alberta actually asked the question then because she asked, would the new discussion tool in Blackboard Ultra be similar? You can add a discussion within a content area. Do you have experience doing this in
I
Ultra?
actually don't. So I'll admit we've been really focused on Hypothesis as a tool because it's been very helpful for us. I haven't actually explored that tool yet. And I mean, I think we're all here. Where the last year it feels like it's been a decade somehow. It's
Sure.
just been so busy. I haven't gotten there yet, but that's on my list for over the summer to actually explore.
That's very true. I have a colleague here at Blackboard. He called every day Blur's Day because literally it's like Groundhog Day all over again.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
yeah. Okay. And I just want to add a quick note for Alberta. Actually, I think that'd be a great use of the tool in Ultra, knowing what I know with it and using it. So I would certainly think about exploring that. We have another question here from a participant here. Any issues with loafers or domination? How do you evaluate
Yeah,
their participation?
yeah. So that is a great
Loafers, I like
question.
that. Yeah.
And as I think about it, I should have included that. You're always going to have loafers. I mean, if you have a way to eliminate people from posting at the last point, I want to know about it because I haven't figured that one out yet. I think that's not a thing you'll be able to completely eliminate. But what I've learned is, in my experience working with this, is I do work very hard to try to bring in relevant current ideas and topics and things that we see, like as a part of our news, and all that. And it seems like that combined with setting the expectation of you need to have this done by this point eliminates the majority of people from doing that on Sunday night when it's due. Now there will always be those people, and in terms of my grading on this, I'm very upfront and I'm clear about you need to do X, Y, and Z to get full points on this one, and the people who don't do that just don't get the points. So loafing is one that it's more problematic in week like 2 and 3, and less so as we go forward, because the people who loaf, who have poor scores, usually correct that, or they're not going to end up passing the class. And that might seem harsh, but that's the way it goes. Domination actually hasn't been a problem at all.
Good.
As we had that concern, right? Because we've all been on Facebook and seen the flaming, tire fires that occur on Facebook. So that was a concern we had. And I definitely have students who are more verbose, and they'll go and post like a paragraph or two. But at no point have I seen a student basically stamp out or go and dominate one thread. It's always been pretty open. And I think that's I think a part of that is because they know I'm watching the feed constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they don't see their peers, they still know that they might be in a class with this peer, in the future. So I really haven't had a problem with that one.
That's great. Joyce made a comment in the chat and she actually said loafers versus dominators. It sounds like a great comic book series, which it made me laugh.
It does.
That out.
Yeah, Avenger movie.
Exactly right. Herman made a comment in the chat. He wanted to know in Hypothesis if you can do a couple things. Can you grade within the Blackboard system and do your grading there? And then also, is there anything with closed captioning?
Yeah, so grading you can. In fact, when I go to grade it, it doesn't show up in needs grading, at least not for us. And maybe that's our IT thing. But I go into the assignment itself. I can grade right in there. I don't have to leave my shell at all. It pushes the grade straight into the Blackboard gradebook. I will say the one thing that you should be aware of, and why we are not using this for summative assessments yet, is that as of right now, from what I have worked with, there's no way to provide a grade plus private feedback to the students. And that is one thing that if I think that they hit a really good point, or if there's something where I'm concerned, I'll reach out privately. But unlike a assignment where I can do that, that doesn't just really exist in this program to my knowledge. And I could be wrong, but that's what I'm seeing.
Okay.
So grading wise, really easy. And what was the second part? I'm sorry, I forgot.
If there was closed captioning involved at all within
No, so this is all written basically. I, from my understanding of it, again, it's websites and PDFs. There's no videos involved. There's none of that stuff, at least that I've ever seen work in this. So there's no CCing. I mean, for myself, I always give them a video announcement that walks through, here's what I want you to do, because I think it's helpful to see me like, at least once a week, and also for me to just walk them through. But there's no CC, but I don't really see that there would be a need for it in that particular software.
Okay, we have a question from Jose. He's asking from Texas on the topic of loafers. Just wondering if an itemized schedule with online discussions is beneficial for all of the institutions. Example, if you did a first post Wednesday, a second post Friday, third and final post by Sunday, does that seem to take care of that loafer issue a little bit? Or
I think you have to think about who your student population is. So for our college, like I said, I've taught students from 16 to roughly about 80. We have people across income, ranges, purposes, all of that stuff. So I've tried that, in fairness, not with our hypothesis, with a discussion board. I've tried that before. And the feedback I've received from the people I teach was, look, I work 2 jobs, Monday through Friday. I really, frankly, honestly, don't have time to do this until the weekend. So for myself, I take the stance of, you're all adults. You can manage your own time. And so I back off and go and tell them, like, look, I would like you to see, or like, I'd like to see initial posts by Thursday or Friday to allow you to have more ability to have a discussion. But within the confines, I think I can better meet my students' needs by just going and saying it's all due by date X, get the work done. And most of them, it's not really a problem.
Okay. Wonderful. Herman has another question. He asked if, very similar to how you do rating systems. Well, even in this chat, there's a like button, like in Facebook, in Padlet, you can rate things. Is there anything like that available in this particular interface as well?
What's really funny, rating a notation or a comment is actually a thing that a student brought up to me, as in, like, it would be cool to have, and I actually forwarded it on to Hypothesis and said this would be cool. And it sounds like something, and I might be out of turn here, but it sounds like a thing that they might be working on, hopefully, fingers crossed. Okay. I think it would be a really cool thing to do.
Nate actually just made a comment. He said you can do emojis and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you can at least put a smiley face if you like something, or maybe a frown face or something if you don't, I guess, right? Okay. Watching the chat here.
Well, and I'll say on that point as well, my experience has been, once the class gets into this, once they kind of realize what the tool is, you can track posts pretty easily based on the amount of replies to that post. So if there's one that's like really good, like, I mean, with the research piece, there was one student who had a great summary of, here's what I learned. And there was, out of a class of roughly 40 people, probably had 20 folks like who were all like, wow, like this was perfect, and like, it helped clear up things for me. And so I've kind of learned that replies to original posts are a way to track, both good posts and also discussion worthy, I'll say, posts.
All right, I got another question here for you, Tim.
Okay.
Do you provide feedback on the comments that students are making? And if not, how do students learn them? What is a good post or what is not a good post, aside from their grades?
Yeah, so that evolves through my semester. All right. The first thing is, I'll say, regardless of if we're in week 1 or week 15, I always give them what I call a debrief, which is the week after we do that post. So for the clean air thing, the week after, I actually have I make a video on Sunday once I've seen most of the posts and I've gone through and read them, that provides as a class feedback about, for the questions where there's a right and a wrong, here's what's right, here's why it's right. For the ones where it's a position stand, I go through and I kind of summarize the major positions I see and any potential problems there, any things that are good, and then the different viewpoints that are being used. So I do give them class feedback. Now, early on, I will say that I play less of a overseer role and more of a participant role, where I'll go in there and I'll actually give feedback as a player in this, and go and say, hey, this is a great post here, but did you think about this? Please expand. So I will give them feedback early on. So it begins more hands-on, and then as we go forward, I pull back a bit once they kind of go and get the hang of it.
Awesome. That's great advice. Thank you. Somebody actually just asked you, how could you use TikTok? Do you have any experience doing that?
I haven't, frankly. I played around with things like Flipgrid before. Haven't tried TikTok before. To be honest, we have I think another unique challenge in this state, in that we have, if memory serves, one of the lowest average bandwidths in the nation up here,
Really?
in Boise. So I have students who, no joke, at their house they get 3 megabytes up and less than one down.
Wow.
Or no, flip that. So they have a problem even posting video. So I try to accommodate that, in that I'm trying to keep in mind, we have a unique group up here. So just trying to, keep in mind that that might not be a possibility for everyone who's in my class.
That actually leads me to a different question then. Just there's not another one waiting, so I'll ask my question. Do you find then that sometimes the idea of mobile delivery of content is a really good idea? Because sometimes I know with bandwidth issues, with Wi-Fi and that kind of thing, a lot of times mobile connectivity itself will be better than like the home Wi-Fi situation. Is that something that you're seeing as a trend in your
I don't
area?
have data on this one. I think so. I would say, from my opinion on this, if you're in a spot where your home Wi-Fi is that low, you probably, like, you might not have 4G. That might be the case. Or we could also have, again, we have a lot of people in the state that are low income, and they might not have the ability to do a hotspot off their phone.
Right.
So, so mobile is important, and in fact, that's part of why we've made some adjustments, is to make Blackboard and what we teach more mobile friendly. So if they have to drive into a Starbucks to get online because their Wi-Fi at home just doesn't work, they can do it with just their phone. But I haven't seen them trying to do assignments from home with that in place of their Wi-Fi, from my experience. And we know as a institution too, I'll go and say this, we know as an institution, because we track this, that something like 70 to 80% of our traffic to Blackboard is through a personal computer, not through a mobile phone or a tablet.
Okay. It's interesting because it was just kind of tying back to our keynote speaker today too. So I just thought that would be kind of an interesting perspective from an area that maybe is not as robust as you said, with connectivity. So certainly an interesting topic there.
And it's all about knowing your population who's here and working with what we have. So that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, and then adjusting expectations, as you mentioned. I think that's fantastic. Haman said, I have 4 children and the connectivity often gets crowded, which I can relate to because I have 2 teenage boys at home who are gamers. So yeah, I totally can relate to that. All right, I think we're doing well here today. I think we're almost at time. So I don't see any other questions. Anybody else have any questions? Please post them in the chat real quick. We'll be sure to get those with Tim. Or any final thoughts, Tim, that you have?
No, not really. I mean, I think the big one is, as we've all found out, there's a lot that we can do online, and you just have to play with what you have. I mean, we could talk all day about things that we've done to adjust to try to make the in-person experience that we do actually happen online. And this has just been a tool that's been very successful for us to make that happen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that you're talking about different types of teaching methods here too, that we really can bridge across, other different kinds of tools also. So I think that's really helpful. And especially on how to engage our students, because it's so important when it comes to our online teaching, right? We all know this already. So, I have another question for you. What is the student response to this type of learning? Did they seem to really grasp on?
So the evaluations that I've had the last 2 terms, because I've used this introductory wise before that, but the last 2 terms have been really heavy in this. It seems that they like it. It seems that they feel like it's for for a lot of the people who prefer in person, they're like, it's not the same as being in the classroom, but it's the best we've had so far. Is that I actually felt like there was, a discussion, and I learned how to apply these ideas in real life. So I would say overall positive. There's always, that one kid who's just like, I hated everything in this class.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you can't stop that. You can't please, everybody. But
No.
I'd say overall, it's been very positive as long as you ease them in and you're abundantly clear about what we're doing and how I am going to assess you.
That's awesome. And what a great compliment to say it's as close to being as in person as they possibly can. That's a great compliment. Well, we are at time. I'm going to thank you again, Tim, for such a great presentation, and thank everybody for the chat and the great questions. Thank you for joining us for our Digital Teaching Symposium here in 2021. We look forward to seeing you in other sessions that we have, and you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day. And Tim, thank you again. Great job.
Absolutely.